want to be a contributor this week? You'll be my contributor. No, you just want to purr. Okay. All right. Hello, and welcome to Let Us Talk, a Nerd Salad podcast. I am your host, the Kieselguer Kid, and this week we are trying something radically different. We had some scheduling issues with some contributors, and also we've had kind of long-standing audio recording issues with a lot of different things that have been going on. And so I thought, since I still wanted to have content to drop this week, that I could just come on and chat for a little bit. Come on and do maybe a little mini rant about something that was still kind of along the theme of what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about this week was the trend of the looter shooter in video games, particularly with the recent release of Borderlands 3. And so I thought with this little mini rant that I could just kind of take a few minutes of your time and share my thoughts upon this game and thinking about the broader genre. And there is a very happy, very enthusiastic purring cat in my lap who is very happy that I am talking about Borderlands right now. So if you hear any sort of background thing that sounds a little bit like a motorboat, that's just Vincent living his best life, doing his stuff. Okay, so obviously Borderlands 3 came out. I believe it would be about a week ago as of this recording, and I believe this recording is going to go out pretty shortly after I actually record it. And I have spent some time with it, not a whole ton of time, not enough time to like break down the story for you or to really give a comprehensive review of things like the narrative, but I feel like I've spent enough time with it. I've spent enough time with it to be able to decide whether or not I wish to remain invested, right? I've given it a fair shot. And so kind of here are my thoughts, maybe a little mini review, right? Consider this kind of a review of Borderlands 3 as a game. My first thought is simply to say that it is an absolutely perfect looter shooter experience if you are playing by yourself. I know that looter shooters are often a more cooperative experience, and I know that Borderlands has that capability, right? You can do both online co-op and split-screen local co-op, though I have heard that the split-screen local co-op leaves something to be desired. But it really is an absolutely perfect experience for the solo player who just wants to dig in to a sort of narrative experience on their own, right? Because I have played everything I've played of Borderlands 3 so far, I have played by myself. And it has been a perfectly balanced experience. It doesn't feel like there's too many enemies, that the enemies are too powerful for me. And I know that that's because they did a lot more work in consciously balancing the game this time, and also that they've added a couple difficulty settings, which it's been years since I've played Borderlands 2 or the original Borderlands, but I actually just got done playing the pre-sequel and there wasn't a difficulty slider in that, so I feel like difficulty sliders might be a kind of new thing, but it feels like a really balanced experience for if you just want to kind of tackle this game and tackle Pandora and the wilds on your own, which to me makes this a lot friendlier of an experience than some other looter shooters. Like, my only other real looter shooter experience is with the original Destiny, which I did play. I played through the main storyline of that, and I played through all the DLC, but I didn't know anyone else who played it, and so a lot of the time I was just put on, like, random fire teams or random raids with, other players who I didn't know, but who were of my same level, and, and that can, as pairing with randos on the internet goes, it can go either really super well or really super poorly, and because I happen to be a woman, right, because I happen to be a female identifying gamer, I ended up getting some kind of creepy messages, right? And so all of this is to say that the fact that I don't have to worry about any of that and that I can just play Borderlands by myself and have a good time with a balanced experience, I think really does a lot for me. So if you maybe aren't super jazzed about the whole move towards always multiplayer for a lot of AAA games, I think Borderlands does positive things for you. And oh my god, Vincent almost just knocked over my coffee. He is a little monster. But yeah. So, moving on, talking about some of the other pros of the game is that this Borderlands is, I mean, they've had, God, how many years since Borderlands 2 came out? They've had a good chunk of time to polish the experience, and that comes through in subtle but important ways. There are kind of, particularly the shooting mechanics, like when you're in combat and you're engaged in combat for a large portion of the game, it being a looter shooter. But I really want to talk about a couple new things that they've added that I really, really enjoy. One, enemies are now staggered when you hit them some of the time. So if you shoot an enemy, particularly with like a shotgun, it can knock them back, it can knock them off their feet, and then they have to get up. And so there is that really great moment of kind of being able to use that staggering to your advantage. So I really enjoy that as a new mechanic. And this was something, and then this other thing was something that they kind of boosted in the promo material for Borderlands. But I really enjoy the fact that cover degrades now. Right? I really enjoy that because it forces you to think more strategically about your use of the landscape in which you are fighting. So it leads to this slight, not super more nuanced, because, you know, you are still just finding the biggest, best guns and then killing bad guys with the biggest, best guns. If there is even such a thing as a bad guy in Borderlands, the morals are all very gray there. But it does lead to this slightly more nuanced combat experience where every time you enter into combat, you have to be considering, okay, how long can I stay in this exact position and where can I move? Is there a place with more solid cover? So it is just this really great experience overall, I feel, personally. And that's just kind of mechanically. Narratively speaking, which is kind of the other big prong that I wanted to talk about today, it is just another Borderlands game, right? Not counting Traveler's Tales, Tales from the Borderlands. It's our fourth installment in the Borderlands series, because there's 1, 2, pre-sequel, and now 3. And it really is just narratively a direct continuation, right? Same sorts of jokes, same sorts of stakes, same sorts of characters. And so we could talk a little bit about whether or not this is a good thing, right? I've seen some people complaining about how Borderlands just being more Borderlands isn't satisfying because they've had all of this time to innovate on the form and they apparently haven't. And I know that I spoke in a blog post when I was talking about the new Invader Zim special. I talked about, you know, when you have all of this time to grow and develop your art, and then you just keep producing the same thing, you need to sit down and reevaluate what you're doing and why. And so I'm kind of stuck here, ideologically, right, between Borderlands 3 being more Borderlands, which is exactly what we want, and Borderlands 3 being just more Borderlands, which means that it's a disappointment as a piece of art. And I guess I'm going to kind of waffle on that and say that it's sort of both, right? Because there is a power in nostalgia, right? There is definitely a power in nostalgia, and we can seek out things for nostalgia value, which I could certainly see happening in the case of this game, right? Like, I think, like I said, I just played the pre-sequel, but when I played Borderlands 2, I was still living in, like, my freshman college dorm, right? So it definitely brings back some memories of that time wherein, you know, I was maybe less of an adult, still fucking up, still being a kid, still learning. Not to say I'm an actual adult right now, but I was even less of an adult back then. So there is merit to this idea that crafting experiences explicitly to give us nostalgia has value, right? I definitely want to think about that. But also, I do agree with the idea that if you were producing basically the same thing and that your art hasn't grown or developed at all, that maybe you need to think about why you're still putting forward this same message, right? Because it doesn't feel like Borderlands is putting out this same message because there's an issue that hasn't been addressed. It just feels like it's putting out this same message because, broadly speaking, people find this message sort of pleasant. And it doesn't do a whole lot to challenge us or to challenge the form, to innovate upon anything that the looter shooter genre has done. It just does exactly what we all expect it to do really well. So, is that good? Is that bad? Gonna kind of waffle on that. What I will say narratively is that Borderlands is still not a particularly sensitive experience narratively. It verges on / becomes straight up offensive at various points, and I think it does that because it still sort of banks on this early 2000s, early 2010s model of like shock value to provide humor. And that plays a little differently here in 2019. I noticed that they have changed the name of a common enemy, right? In Borderlands 1 and 2, there were and pardon the term, it's pretty offensive, but there were the midget psychos, right? Those were a bad guy. They still have little people. They still have people with dwarfism acting as bad guys pretty commonly, but they changed the name and they are now called Tinks, which I'm not so sure that that's better. I don't feel like that solves the core issue, even though they moved away from the term. But, so it's still not a particularly sensitive experience. Not that I think it operates in an awful lot of, like, hate and bigotry, but, like, there are things that I think definitely could be handled better, but it's also Borderlands, and since it's doing the exact same thing that it's been doing for the past 10 years, that sort of comes part and parcel with it. And then the final thing that I just kind of wanted to note, and I think this is because I'm not super far in the game yet. I think I'm at around level 10. But I'm still, because the whole point of the game, right, is to get you out of Pandora, and all the promo stuff has you on the ship, going to different planets. I have been playing this game for a fair amount of hours, and I am still on Pandora. And there doesn't seem to be any indication of when I will get to leave Pandora. So just kind of as a warning, if you dive into it expecting to immediately begin exploring the stars or explore the stars after like Pandora as like the tutorial area, that's not what happens. There are multiple areas on Pandora, lots of side quests, lots of things going on. So I still haven't gotten to experience a lot of those really great new different environments that was sort of promised by the Borderlands promotional material. I haven't gotten there yet, right? It's a big game and I still have a lot of time, but it takes a hot minute. So just maybe consider that when going in, that for the first several hours of gameplay, you will just still be experiencing the exact same thing. So those are my thoughts upon Borderlands 3. And so I suppose at the end of a review, they're supposed to give you a decision about whether or not to buy or whether or not to play the game. So here's kind of my take on that. If you enjoyed the prior games, right, if you enjoyed Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel, and if you aren't particularly concerned about the idea of art needing to display growth in any form, or if you want the nostalgia of the older Borderlands experiences while still getting new content, then I would recommend picking it up because it is a very polished experience, at least on the PS4. I can't speak to like PC experiences, but on the PS4 for a single player experience, it's very polished and it does exactly what everyone expects from a Borderlands game. So if you want just more Borderlands, definitely pick it up. All right, so that's my time with this new little innovative format that we've got going on here. I might return to this in the future. I might go back to doing the conversations. I'm still just kind of fiddling with things like audio recording and getting everybody scheduled because my own schedule is absolutely absurd now. So we'll kind of see how that all goes. But thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed it, listening to me talk and give you my thoughts for a few minutes. And please continue tuning in to both Let Us Talk and the Nerd Salad blog brand, right, to continue getting content. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye!